Here we are again, getting Ed to answer questions if I can get him away from the work with some more of your questions. So if I can peel him away, we will ask him some questions and see how this goes. Many of you saw the video that we did with Ed and where he mentioned having a heavier or a lighter flywheel and how that affects a car, especially in racing, but actually it can affect a car, even a street car. And so a number of questions came up related to weighting of flywheels, and I thought we'd take a minute. Ed's here with me. Ed, good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to have you here.
Yeah, good.
Thank you for taking some time to answer some questions. This is great. All right, the first question, we're going to get straight to it. On a flywheel size, if you have a lighter or heavier flywheel, how would that affect engine braking?
Engine braking?
Yeah.
I would say, sounds like he's talking about a race car.
Probably, yeah.
So, and it depends on what race car you're using or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, a drag car, you might put a heavy flywheel on it. Most flywheels, I think, are around 50 pounds.
Okay.
It's a normal flywheel, somewhere like that. And then different ones, but sometimes you can buy a special flywheel, steel flywheel. I've heard some guys that had 80-pound flywheels.
Oh, wow.
With a small motor. So that they were quite professionals and they knew it. For instance, Bill Jenkins.
Okay.
He had, I think he had an 80-pound flywheel.
Okay.
So then if he revs it up to 6,000 and dumped the clutch and first gear, the motor never slowed down. It stayed at 6,000.
Right.
It's either going to spin the wheels or raise the front wheels off the ground or launch real hard.
Right.
And then we hit second gear, it didn't slow down either. So it either done a wheel stand or launched.
Right.
And by that time, he's 3 car lengths ahead of everybody else.
Well, I guess when you think about it, a heavy flywheel is like stored energy, isn't it?
Stored energy, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Store all that energy. That's like the old steam engines. Those flywheels on a pair of those were only a 5-horse or 7-horse motor, but the torque they had.
Yeah.
That flywheel must have been 300 pounds each or more.
Yeah.
On the old steam engines, because it just hit once in a while.
Right.
But it had enough inertia to pull anything, saw stuff, or whatever they wanted to do. So that's the same thing. So the flywheel is important.
Okay.
Whatever type of racing you're doing.
Sure.
So then a light flywheel, let's get in our dirt tracking.
Okay.
Dirt cars. We would like to have no flywheel at all.
Is that possible?
Almost.
Okay.
So we would run a Flexplate, a Chevy Flexplate, which weighs like an automatic transmission Flexplate, and we've had some clutches that were bolted on the flywheel, on the crankshaft. They were only 6 inches in diameter.
Oh, wow.
The whole clutch. And so it was maybe 3 or 4 clutch discs in there, so we had the same square foot, but then the clutch didn't weigh anything.
Right.
It didn't revolve. So now our new transmissions, which is in our race cars that we race, like that race car sitting up on the hoist there, is a Brinn transmission, and it has a flex plate and a shaft that goes in the transmission. It's just a button, just splines. There's no clutch at all.
Oh, really?
And then inside the transmission, this Brinn has a clutch, a motorcycle clutch, welded in the cluster gear in the transmission.
Oh, wow.
And the hydraulic line goes between up the clutch pedal.
Wow.
So when you do that, you can put it in gear, but when you push the clutch pedal down, then it applies the clutch, and you take off in first gear. And after you get going, you pull the lever back, and it dog clutches, locks it in like an in and out box.
Okay.
So now the torque goes in the shaft and right out the shaft, extends, and don't have anything to do with the rest of the transmission.
Oh, okay.
So with that, we come off a corner, and we got all kinds of free RPMs, instant RPMs. At the same time, if we're going wide open with some of our bigger motors, you let off the gas, and we'll almost slide the wheels.
Oh.
Like a truck downshifted with the air brake.
Right.
So that's the same thing with the sprint cars are that way too. They don't have a transmission at all. They're not required to have reverse. We are.
Okay.
So we have to have that low and reverse and then this in and out box.
You bring up a good point. On a lot of these questions that are technical, when you're racing, there are so many classes and rules in racing.
Absolutely.
That sometimes we talk about one thing like a
it don't apply to another.
That won't apply to a different thing.
That's right.
And so sometimes people are like, why would you do that? Well, maybe the rules say you have to. I mean, there's different reasons.
Yeah.
So just a reminder on that.
One of the guys that we used to race against a little bit was he had a Pinto 4-cylinder, 2000 Pinto with a turbocharger. I think the guy was from Detroit. Quite smart. I've known him for a long time, but anyways. And I think he had about 80-pound flywheel, and he had a harmonic balancer on the front that weighed about 60 pounds.
Oh, wow.
On the engine. It was a 2000, and he ran 990 and 130 miles an hour with a Pinto. Huge tires with a 4-cylinder.
Wow.
And it was and he was always tops of his class. And stuff.
Cool.
There was another question there.
Yeah, there's the next question is, how much faster would an internally balanced engine without a flywheel, how much does it rev up compared to a normal engine with a light flywheel?
We would like that internal balance motor. We always like internally balanced motors.
Mm-hmm.
That's why some expensive crankshafts have extra counterweights on them.
Mm-hmm.
I have some crankshafts over here that looks really weird. Don't even look like a Chevy crank because it's got so many counterweights on it.
Oh, okay.
And and that's all better. You don't have to mess around with a different harmonic balancer and a different thing. But even though they'll run smoother.
Okay.
Anytime that you're paying weight somewhere on a flywheel and try to balance something, it's not good for the thing. It's not correct.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's a lot better. Yeah.
But as far as the question of revving, it would rev up much faster without?
No, it probably wouldn't.
Okay. Probably about the same.
Probably not. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Next person is, it's kind of an observation, but I want your thoughts on it. They were saying, if you're not careful, if you have a lightweight flywheel, you can more easily burn your clutch.
Absolutely, sure.
Okay.
Because with a light flywheel, if you're trying to move it might kill the engine.
Right.
So now you have to push the clutch back in again and rev it a little higher and get it to slip the clutch a little bit more to get it to go. And there's no inertia. There's no inertia keeping the motor running.
Right.
But if you just push the clutch out too far, just kill the engine. Now you got to start the engine back up again, and you're using the clutch 5 times more. If you had a heavy flywheel with that weight, and you just could leave the clutch out and leave with one clutch apply.
Right. Okay. So
that's
that was very good observation.
Yeah.
Comparing you to Smokey Yunick, is it
That's
Yunick?
good.
Yeah. He's kind of a famous racer engine guy.
Quite smart. Yeah.
A very smart guy.
Very smart.
Yeah. But he said that he used to drill the edge on his flywheels.
He probably did that. I was thinking again, some of that stuff he did was all circle track racing,
Okay.
NASCAR racing and stuff like this. And he probably, if he had a steel flywheel at that time, to get even, I don't know if he ever ran a Flexplate like we would, or a clutch. I know they had to have clutches in those days because they ran 4 speeds. They didn't have 5 speeds and 6 speeds and things like this they'd have nowadays. But he would want to remove the weight. He would want to remove it on the outer side of the flywheel, not the center.
Right. Okay.
That's the weights, the initial weight.
Yeah.
But he wanted because he had no choice but to run a steel flywheel.
So probably the rules would have said you have to have this flywheel.
Yes.
But the rules didn't say you couldn't drill it.
That's right.
Okay.
They wouldn't tell you this. That's the rules.
Yeah.
They can't tell you what you can do
Right.
until they do it and they don't like it.
Then they make new rules.
Yeah, that's like, so even him, I know a lot of things about it. I have a main bearing over here he gave me one time that I still have it, where you groove it and like a spiral in the main bearing itself, and the oil comes out there, the bearing follows those grooves and goes back in the oil pan.
Okay.
Instead of going to the rear end seal.
Ah.
Yeah, and he showed me that, and I got the bearing from him.
So
anyways,
let's do a sidetrack here before you go on. So I didn't know you'd met Smokey.
Yes, I've met him.
How did that come about?
I think it was a trade show.
At a trade show, okay.
Yeah.
And you got to talk to him a little bit, I guess?
Yeah, a little bit, and talked a little bit about that.
That's pretty cool.
How long ago was that? It was kind of funny. I read a lot of articles about him, and some of the things he did, I thought was really smart and common sense. He drilled a hole in the header, on top of the header pipe, just about an inch from the head.
Okay.
On all of them. And then so tech people got after him about that and stuff, and they just fluffed him off. So they thought he was cheating. There was something they couldn't figure out what that 1/4-inch bolt or hole in each header tube.
Okay.
And all it was is when he revved it up in the pits, he could see if the fire's coming out.
It's a visual indicator for him.
Indicator. He could see the fire in each one of the tubes. And if one of them wasn't firing, he knew there's some problem, or it was lean or rich. I thought that was pretty strange.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. And that's Smokey.
Yeah. That's right.
And this whole motor was that way, I'm sure.
I'm sure
That
there
was just a sample.
so many modifications.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, Ed, that's it for our flywheel questions. Thank you so much.
Good.
Thank you for joining us once again for another Ed's Answers episode. Keep sending in your questions. Thank you so much for commenting with those questions, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one.